I was rescued at 9 years old from a personal encounter with the Lord. And so that I think helped mature me even more, because it was after the encounter I had asking for Jesus Christ to come into my heart as my Lord and Savior.
You went on to Michigan State University. I went on to Minnesota, and we kind of lost touch with each other. And then once I graduated, I kept hearing all this noise. Triette is in the House of Representatives in her 20s. And you were a leader in the House at that particular time in Michigan.
I ended up being an aide to State Representative Teola Hunter. And when she decided to leave office in the middle of a term, I ran for her office and filled the remainder of her term. I loved serving the people as a constituent aide for Representative Teola Hunter, who was Speaker Pro Tem. I just remember being with her in meetings with the governor or the Black Caucus or folks like that. I remember being in a meeting with Coleman Alexander Young, the mayor at the time, and I just remember Teola pushing me. And I was scared to death back then.
She knew you had it in you.
Wow.
Well, we knew you had it in you at a very young age. We just didn't know you were going to be a lawmaker in Michigan.
I was always intrigued by the change the government could make. And so, yeah, I remember a shootout, and we were sitting on the bus, and people were terrified. We were watching gangs fight each other on bicycles, riding and shooting. And I said to myself, in Detroit, and I said to myself, why isn't anyone doing anything about this?
How old were you at that time?
I was about 12 or 13 years old.
We saw a lot of stuff like that at that time.
Oh my goodness.
It was amazing how you can grow up in that city and see so much and still, be able to make it.
Have hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, still have hope.
You don't even realize it.
It was like normal.
Normal. Now that I think back, it was normal. You walk outside and everybody's garage is spray painted. Nobody repaints their garage. A very interesting childhood.
Mm-hmm. It was. And you and I have had conversations before. We're survivors. You had to survive back then. I remember the first time in Michigan State, we were walking down the street. We were on our way to McDonald's. A car backfired, the exhaust in a car backfired.
You ducked.
No, the Detroiters dove.
You dove in the bushes.
Yes, we dove into a bush. We were like,
Yeah, I've done
and I'm like, what? We've been traumatized. What is this?
You legislated. You were a Democrat or Republican at that time? I've never asked you that question.
Absolutely. And I was a Democrat for sure.
But you legislated in the middle?
And I followed those who had mentored me, who I know served Detroit. And they were fighters and warriors for our human rights, civil rights, and Detroiters to have their fair share in the state. But my second term was another story.
You got acclimated.
Yeah.
That's only 3 years later, though.
Yeah, but so much happened in those 3 years.
Like,
I ended up managing John Conyers' re-election campaign, and it was for Congress, and it was a tough one. And I remember, supporting the fact that we had a Detroiter in position. If we were to take over and Democrats were to take over in Congress, we had a Detroiter poised to be the judiciary chair. And so I'm like, you do not remove that type of seniority. You
were still in your 20s thinking that way?
Oh my gosh, yes. I remember sitting there with Coleman Alexander Young, and I'm 20-something years old, and I'm saying, Triette, just be quiet and watch, And they're arguing over who's going to get chair of this, who's going to get this, who's going to get that for 3 hours. He was so frustrated. He said, I just want you all to choose the person that's best for Detroit. And this was such a huge impact for me as a young person in government and politics. It devastated me that we couldn't get beyond ourselves to do what was best. That became foundational for me going forward, both in ministry and in politics.
I want to get your thoughts on this because you just mentioned something about African Americans in power and how it's so difficult for us to work together to move things forward, things that benefit our community overall.
I just believe that people who are in these major seats of influence should be called. I just do. I believe that you should be called to teach children. And legislating or government is no different. But we have people who enter politics just like we have people in medicine and everything else with all kind of different motives. And those motives show up in rooms like that. I discovered that as a kingdom-minded person, I was now an ordained minister in the legislature. And as a kingdom-minded person, it changed who I was. It changed my votes. It changed the influence of what I did and how I did it. It changed who I participated with and how. When I first got there, we had a very polarizing vote to unseat the Detroit school board, a duly elected school board. And after the Republican-controlled legislature did that, I was infuriated. But I went home and I prayed, and the Lord impacted my heart. And so we ended up starting a prayer group. That prayer group soon became ritualistic and didn't mean anything. He said, "What do you think, Tree? You coming back?" I said, "Never again." I said, "I don't have time to waste." I said, "People in here just playing." That next time I served in the legislature, I had those kind of epiphanies about the divisions amongst us.
How did you know you were called? What was the confirmation?
In the back of my mind and my spirit everywhere, I was full of one message. It kept playing over and over and over again while I saw my life plan. It kept saying, "You're supposed to be somebody." That was one of the first times I really knew you can't do and be like everybody else. You're supposed to be somebody.
Triette, I heard those same words. I did.
And we didn't tell each other. We knew each other back then.
Because I wasn't sure what I was hearing.
Okay.
I remember showing up to the University of Minnesota, and all the freshmen, we were all gathered in the dorm. And everybody was talking about they were going to the pros. And when they asked me, I was the only person. I was like, "No, I'm here to get this degree. They paying for a free education. I'm going to take full advantage of this. Because
Wow.
I don't know what the future is, but I know I'm leaving here with a college degree." And I kept hearing those same words over and over. "You're going to be somebody. You're going to be somebody.
Wow.
And you have a responsibility," was the other thing I kept hearing. I couldn't put it together.
Right.
I just kept hearing those words, and when I would go to sleep, that's all I heard. You got to be somebody. You got to lead. You got to contribute.
I'm getting chills.
Yeah.
Because we've known each other all this time.
Yeah.
And I've never told you that story.
I know.
And you've never told me this story. And we're friends.
Yes, close.
The Lord's saying, "I've anointed you to do something and to be somebody." And what he was saying is, my representative, I'm going to use you. And people, actually prophets and other people, will come up to me and say, "You don't have a clue who you are." And at first, I would get irritated. And then, you know what? I just stopped. I said, "Okay, I don't know yet."
Yeah, that happened to me. That happened to me too. So one day I get this call. I'm at the University of Minnesota. The head coach was Coach Lou Holtz.
Okay.
And so one day I get this call from the secretary in the football office, and she said, "Coach Holtz wants to see you." And I was thinking to myself, why does Coach Holtz want to see me? I didn't do anything. I didn't get drunk last night. I didn't have a fight in the club. So I go see Coach Holtz, and I sat down, and he said, "I just wanted to just communicate something to you." And I said, "What's that, Coach?" He said, "All I need you to do is one thing." And so I was like, "This is strange." And I said, "What is that, Coach?" He said, "Treat other people the way you want to be treated, and I promise you your life is going to be great." And so I sat there and I looked at him like, "What's next?" He said, "That's it." And I left, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to start treating other people the way I want to be treated." That's how I lived my life from that point on. And man, he helped me all the way through the process to help me get where I am today.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the timing of that advice, that was so prophetic, actually, because it made you intentional from that point on. I found in my walk and in my journey that you get authenticated when others come and say, I see who you are. Yeah.
You talk about marketplace. You mentioned that to me, and I was like, what the heck is she talking about? So you have these you talk about these various institutions and terms in religion.
Yeah, the marketplace is what Jesus preached on. Where Jesus preached that. Jesus spent less of his time in church, in the temple, in the synagogue. Jesus spent most of his time in the marketplace, out on hillsides, out on the shore side, out amongst people who were working. When he started teaching parables, even though people didn't understand his parables, he was teaching people about real life things, about being a shepherd, about being a fisherman, about being a store owner, or about being a businessman. And so Jesus taught more about marketplace than he did about church. And so we go out to serve him. We go out to represent him. And we represent him by that word that you got from the coach. I went to a conference, a leadership conference, and Miles Monroe was there. He talked about purpose, but he talked about succession. So I have this example from Coleman Alexander Young, mayor, and I have this example about him stating, you all got to think about the whole. Jesus is this leader who left behind 11 world changers.
Were they all market?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about maybe Peter and John, who stayed back in Jerusalem, they became the foundation of building of the church. But many of them were sent out. They were evangelistic. Paul.
The book that you have out now is called Rooftop Dwellers. Explain what a rooftop dweller is.
A rooftop dweller is a person who has come to the point in their lives where nothing is between them, impeding them, and their organic, authentic relationship with the Most High. And a rooftop dweller is a new platform for people who've come to the resolve, wherever they are, that only what God has for them lasts, and their personal relationship with him is the supreme relationship above all others. So rooftop dwellers are people who have learned to forsake and leave some things, all things other than what they need for their assignment. If it's not necessary for the assignment, you have to let it go. Their entire agenda is surrendered and submitted to him and to him alone. But the rooftop is a virtual place where you can worship God. You can worship him on the water board. You can worship him in the legislature. You can worship him in Congress. You can worship him on the school bus. You can worship him in the school, in elementary school, in college. You can worship him wherever you are, and you don't come down from where God calls you. Look at our lives, how God told us both we're supposed to be somebody. And look at our battle and how we've had to fight to remember that at various times in our lives. When we were tested and challenged, it's like, nah, you done went too far. You're supposed to be somebody. It's learning how to walk in that somebody.
When does this book come out?
It comes out the end of February 25th is our launch.
Okay, when do I get my copy?
You're going to get the first copy, autographed and all. I believe you're a rooftop dweller, Bruce Holmes. I believe that God has brought us together. The day I looked and saw you in my messenger account, I said,
was looking for you.
Bruce? I was looking
for you for years. I was like, Sam, I heard she was in the house. And I was like, why can't I find Triette? It was remarkable when we reconnected, and then I'm not a pastor or anything, but it felt like it was ordained. Mm-hmm. And something said, I need to introduce her to the pastors down here in Atlanta. There has to be a connection. And that's when we connected with Bishop Bruce Smith.
Yes, I mean that, and I saw that. I saw that marketplace connection on you, right? Just connecting people where they needed to be connected. You knew it. You wouldn't let me off the phone. because I had no connections at that time to the international community. So you connected me to Archbishop Ruth Smith, and her connection through the International Fellowship and Light of the World, it connected me abroad to